Since the toppling of Muammer Gaddafi in 2011, Libya has been plunged into a state of violence and lawlessness, and all this in a region that is already in turmoil and on the doorstep of Europe. Is this the world's next biggest security problem? Hello and welcome back to Analysis Review. With me here to discuss the situation in Libya are Kersten from the London School of Economics and the FT's foreign editor, Roula Khalaf. Welcome. Roula, just tell us, Libya's essentially been a failed state for a number of years, really, hasn't it? But what has happened now more recently that has suddenly made the situation so much worse?
I think two issues that are interconnected and that pose a much bigger threat from a country that is, as you said, at the doorstep of Europe. One is the concern over migration, illegal migration. But the bigger issue right now is that there are more than one group, extremist group in Libya, that have pledged allegiance to the Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant, killings of the Christians, for instance. So if ISIS is gaining a foothold in Libya, Libya's not Iraq. That is obviously of much bigger concern to security agencies in Europe.
Right. Mark, bring you in here. Is what we're seeing here essentially also just the result of failure of the West? That, we sort of intervened and then absconded pretty quickly?
Well, I don't think we should blame the West alone. I think there's shared responsibility. I think all of the actors on the ground, as well as the international community more broadly, drank an overly optimistic Kool-Aid in believing that so long as we removed Gaddafi, then Libya could almost immediately be prosperous and democratic. And this clearly isn't the case. There's an ongoing fight for the spoils of war. We see the tensions between regions that we've often seen previous to the actual civil war. And in fact, all of these problems are being compounded by the fact that there's a diaspora of military arms and hardware, as well as the fact that Libya is now being a proxy war between regional states. And the ironic thing, I think, for the international community now is that rather than a more effective kind of peacemaking operation at the beginning of the civil war or at the end of the civil war, which would have cost a lot of money, in fact, now they'll have to pay a lot more given the fact that now this has been compounded by the arrival of ISIS and other very troubling factors, including migration.
I think it's true that there was a sort of naive aspect to the intervention in Libya, and it was colored by previous interventions, Iraq mainly. So having intervened so forcefully in Iraq, I think they wanted a much lighter intervention in Libya. And there was a lot of resistance even within the UN Security Council. We know Russia's position, of course. But of course, had the West looked, or had Europe in particular, because it was at the end of the day mostly European-led intervention, it was easy to see that the proliferation of militias, the lack of any institutions, and of any culture of democracy or compromise of political parties was bound to lead to a situation that would, soon get out of control.
Roula, you mentioned the role that European countries play, but Mark, tell us a bit about Egypt, because they have more recently now gotten involved in Libya, and could they be maybe a force for bringing some stability?
It's not just Egypt. Egypt has taken an increasing role in having fought back against ISIS in the east of Libya, but we see Qatar involved, we see the United Arab Emirates involved, we see Turkey involved, and I think this is deeply problematic, and it's unclear how this will shape out. Now, I think it's critically important that if there is going to be any kind of stability, that those regional states and those states that are now using Libya as a proxy area to fight some kind of battle actually engage effectively and productively in some kind of peace process to bring together a unity government or whatever it is that the United Nations and international community more broadly is working on as this kind of last-ditch effort to save Libya from becoming not just a failing state, but a full failed state.
Roula, do you see any chance of that happening?
The outside interventions, the proxy war, is making things much worse in Libya. There is now an attempt by the UN. There's a UN envoy Bernardino Leon, who's been attempting to bring all the parties together. There was one meeting. There are always, every step is extremely difficult because one of the parties doesn't want to join. And you have to remember, we're talking about a lot of people involved here. So if, the backers of various militias are able to push their clients to come to the negotiating table, then maybe, Libya has a chance. But even the envoy says that, say you get a deal, you will not be able to rely on the parties alone. You will need some kind of peacekeeping element to any deal that is produced.
Do you see,
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think what we see now is the international community playing a little bit of catch-up. I think it's quite clear that some kind of peacekeeping, peace operation should have been in place at the very beginning. Some kind of stability and security, rather than, this triumphalist rhetoric of, well, we removed Gaddafi now, everything's done and everything's going to be okay, because there's this optimism and there's this goodwill.
Thank you, Mark, Kersten. Thank you, Roula, Khalaf. And thank you for watching. For more on this and other topics covered by our analysis team, please go to ft.com/analysis. Until the next time, goodbye.